coverage of Grand Prix Phoenix. The format's modern. The players at the table are Galan Falakfarsa, who is a top 4 competitor from Grand Prix Santa Clara, and Parker Jensen. The matchup, Mardu Pyromancer, a deck we saw Jerry Thompson take all the way to the finals of the last Pro Tour, and Parker Jensen playing Affinity, a deck that we've just seen in Modern for as long as Modern has been a format. And one of the appeals of this deck is Thoughtseize, and that's how Galan kicks things off here, takes a cranial plating. Still another one to deal with there from Parker Jensen.
Yeah, we'll put Thoughtseize up on screen for you because I'm sure you've never seen it before.
See a hand of Ornithopter.
There was another plating there,
Another
wasn't there?
plating, yeah. So still a pretty explosive hand here coming from Parker Jensen.
Yeah, Vault Scourge there. It didn't look
Vault
like there
Scourge,
was
yeah.
another artifact to turn on the Mox on the first turn. Well, that could change depending with his draw step. All right, there we are.
Plays the second Mox to turn on the first Mox, plays the cranial plating, says go. He is down to 1 card in hand.
So that was just everything right there, wasn't it?
Yeah. That 1 card in hand was a land. So he is going to be able to now equip the Vault Scourge with the cranial plating and gets to attack. Lightning Bolt is going to take down the Scourge, but you see that Parker attacked with the Ornithopter because he was worried about a bolt and was able to pay the sort of that hidden ability
Yeah, the
of cranial plating,
cost.
black, and move the cranial plating across to the Ornithopter and get in for 3.
Yeah, clever.
Yeah, that was really nice.
Yeah, really tight play there from Parker. The nice thing about Galan's deck is this matchup is great for him. The fact that he not only has a ton of inexpensive spot removal, but he also has access to cards like Kolagon's Command in the main deck. These cards can destroy things like Cranial Plating once they've resolved in Game 1. That's something most decks can't really do. Galan also has access to Lingering Souls, which is another tremendous card in the Affinity matchup. He also just has discard and inexpensive spot removal. So this is pretty much a dream matchup for Galan. He's just hoping to not get completely overrun. Believe we have a Steel Overseer here for Parker Jensen.
And there's a card you mentioned earlier, Kolagon's Command, and he's going to get the full-on 2-for-1 with that.
There we are. There's the fancy, as we like to say, the fancy version of Steel Overseer.
Yeah. I have a different F word in mind whenever someone plays them on camera, but that's fine.
Was it phenomenal?
Yes. So another Steel Overseer comes down.
Oh, boy. I thought we needed the beat button there for a minute.
No, I haven't needed the beat button yet, so I think I'm clear. Memnite, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. So, pretty, the top of the deck has been very kind to Parker Jensen here after he was down to just 1 card at the end of turn 1.
But down to just 1 card in a good way, right?
Absolutely. All right, Bedlam Reveler. Discarding a Bedlam Reveler is the play from Galan Falakfarsa. Gets 3 new cards.
Yeah, Galan, a bit flooded there. Did not have an answer to Parker's Steel Overseer and forced to let him untap with it, which is never a good sign when you're playing against this Affinity deck. I still think Galan's probably in a good position. This matchup is so good for him that he can win games here, even when he's letting his opponent untap for a turn with a Steel Overseer.
Yeah, plays, activates Steel Overseer, puts a +1/+1 counter on all his artifact creatures, gets in for 1 with the Ornithopter. But we have a whole new hand of cards really here for Galan. Let's see what he can do.
I think that swamp is the most gorgeous of the set of 5.
Yeah. Fatal Push takes down the Overseer. In comes the Bedlam Reveler.
And that has additional power thanks to...
the Prowess trigger.
Do you know the origin of Bedlam?
I do not.
It is a corruption, a shortened version of Bethlehem, which was the mental asylum in London.
Oh, wow.
So people got sent to Bedlam, or Bethlem, as it was originally. Bethlehem, Bedlam. And so Bedlam literally meaning, a bunch of people who are just insane.
And you make fun of the way I talk.
I do. You're right.
All right, so here we go. Lingering Souls comes down and is flashed back. So I'm sure we'll get the appropriate tokens over there in a moment.
Yeah, this is now a huge blocking army here for Galan. That's going to give him 2 prowess triggers.
Yeah, he gets to swing in for 5 with the Bedlam Reveler here. And Affinity seems like a deck that has really taken it on the chin in the last couple rounds of Modern. Just not the powerhouse that it once was.
I think that's absolutely true. I think that people can do more powerful things in the early game now than Affinity. I think Fatal Push was a big problem for Affinity. Now there's more than just Lightning Bolt to fight through. A deck like Galen's is a very good example of why Affinity has struggled as of late. The fact that you can play against somebody who has 4 bolts and 4 fatal pushes.
And up to 4 Colligan's commands.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, then it's just lights out,
and
right?
then it's like, and that's even more if you factor in a Bloodbraid Elf somewhere along the way, right? Like,
absolutely.
All right, 2 prowess triggers here. Wow, Metamorphose. One of my favorite cards in the history of Magic. Draw a card, sort your mana out. He's going to flash back Faithless Looting, which he's already cast this turn. So he's going 5 cards deep into his deck this turn. What's he looking? We got to discard something there. All right, there we go.
Oh wow! If he's discarding a Faithless Looting, then he's got to be in a very nice position here.
So he's got 3 prowess triggers. He's going to attack. He's going to keep those Lingering Souls tokens back. And Ornithopter is going to chump block the Bedlam Reveler, and there is a young Pyromancer.
Was Young Frankenstein? That was the series, right? One point, right? In America, you had a TV series, the show called Young Frankenstein. Is that right? Maybe that was Teen Wolf, or I don't know. Okay, never mind. You just carry on with the magic. I'll be over here.
Okay. Yeah, the Young Pyromancer is a really great card in this deck. The deck almost never runs out of gas when it's operating on all cylinders.
When you name a deck after a card, it's generally amazing.
Yeah, and I mean there are a number of Pyromancer decks right now in Modern. This card is very good. This card's seeing play in Legacy now.
So you see Galan flashback, a Faithless Looting, the one he had discarded last turn, gets to make a token, gets a prowess trigger. He's going to
terminate?
Dreadbore? Or is that a
Oh,
terminate?
Dreadbore. Yeah, you're right.
Dreadbore, the Ornithopter. I kind of think of that as generic terminate, like with a lowercase t. Yeah, it's a terminate.
Elastic asks, what's up with people who tap their cards to the left? It's just not right, is it?
Oh. How much did you pay that person?
It turns out all I have to do is watch the screen and the opportunities just keep on piling up.
And you may have thought to yourself, oh, why is Galan targeting an Ornithopter with Dreadbore when there's an Arcbound Ravager on the other side of the table? That's a much more powerful card. And here you see that Galan has 4 points of power in the air. Parker Jensen's at 8. 8 divided by 4 is 2, and the only flyer Parker had in play was that Ornithopter. Yeah. So Galan correctly recognized that by using the Dreadbore on the Ornithopter, he set himself up to win over the course of the next 2 turns.
Even though his opponent has one of the most feared cards in the history of Magic, one of the things that makes this archetype so formidable, he recognized that one of the most maligned cards in the history of Magic, the Ornithopter, was the thing that he actually needed to get out of the way. And here comes the entire team from Galan.
Finally, it feels like those Lingering Souls tokens have just been sitting in play forever, but finally, got it done.
2 big swings, and he's able to take down those last 8 points of damage from Parker Jensen. Game 1 goes to Galan Falakfarsa.
All right, so that's Galan 1-0 up. You're watching MTG Launch with Rich BDM and JVL. I can tell you that the deck lists are in for our subsequent matches in the round. And the match we're going to go to at the conclusion of this one is a Jund deck in the hands of Bobby Carpenter, and he is up against Kenzie Ryan, who is playing Dredge. So we're going to see Jund against Dredge. That's going to be our second match. And then later on, well, we're going to see something, if we get there, something very, very aggressive indeed. The 4 Burning Tree Emissary, Simian Spirit Guides, Goblin Guides, Tarmogoyf Signal Pests, Bushwhackers aplenty, 8 of those Goblins and Reckless ones. So a very, very fast red-green, as it were, beatdown deck up against some Emrakuls and Chandra Torch Defiances and Nahiri. So I think the aggro's going to want the early game to belong to them. So we're going to see Dustin Drury against Josh Adkins if we get time before Marshall and Eduardo turn up for the start of the Pro Show in round 3. But Jund against Dredge is what's coming up next at the conclusion of this, where Mardu Pyromancer leads 1-0. Gentlemen.
So we mentioned earlier that Galan Falakfarsa was top 4 at Grand Prix Santa Clara. He played with Isaac Sears and Dan Maybe.
You sure?
Positive. Because he's staying with his team for the Pro Tour, and they're going to play a Pro Tour 25th anniversary together.
Of course, yeah,
so
fantastic.
He's pretty excited about that. He's from Davis, California. Parker Jensen, he's from Utah, and he is in school and he works. His work is with mentally handicapped adults, and there was a connection between these two players because Galan actually works with people with autism. So,
wow!
So they little bit of a connection there in terms
both
of
players making a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good on them.
Caretakers. So,
yeah, good stuff. Is he pretty jazzed about coming from Utah?
the worst name in the history of sports franchises.
The Utah Jazz.
The Utah Jazz. They were the New Orleans Jazz, which was
were they?
one of the greatest names in sports franchise history.
Okay.
And then it just becomes one of the most sort of absurd because there is nothing you associate less than Utah and Jazz.
Fair. Just to fill you in, by the way, we've decided we're taking a unilateral decision as a coverage team that we may not bother covering round 8 tonight because in the building next door, the Phoenix Suns are playing the Golden State Warriors at 7 o'clock. So if the stream cuts out at 6:45, that's why. It's like Steph Curry equals more important than 10,000 of you.
Steph Curry's not playing.
Is he not?
He's hurt.
Is he?
Yeah, he rolled his ankle. Right. He's been out for a few games.
Yeah, so now the Warriors are like only the
Mortal.
best team in the NBA by a little bit.
Oh no!
Yeah, Houston would like a word with you.
That's reasonable.
Yeah. So so there we are. But
turning our attention back to the matter at hand.
Yeah, go on then.
Jake, what does the Affinity deck do after sideboarding? Does it have any answers here to this Mardu Pyromancer deck?
Yeah, so the big things that Affinity wants to be doing are interacting with the graveyard here post-board. I think that Grafdigger's Cage and Relic of Progenitus are definitely coming in here for Parker. Parker also has Bitter Blossom in his sideboard. And this is a card that Parker could use to kind of stretch Galan's removal spells much thinner than they would otherwise have to be. And, Galan's plan is going to be just to kill everything he sees with a spot removal spell. And there are only so many cards he really needs to care about that much. And as long as he kills those, he'll be fine. But if Parker is able to land a card like Bitter Blossom very early in the game, let's say on turn 2, that is going to just put Galan in a position where he might not have enough cards to deal with the onslaught that Parker's presenting.
Yeah, well, we started the day talking about Boggles versus Bogles. I can confirm you're right, Jake. It is Garland, not Galan as in Deep Space Nine, but Garland as in Falakfarsa.
Right.
So here we go again. Game number 2, here in round number 2, MTG launch, and here with the call for game number 2 is Brian David Marshall and Jacob Van Lunen.
All right. Galan Falakfarsa. He's going to be on the draw here. And Parker Jensen had a pretty good turn 1 in game 1, but this this Mardu Pyromancer deck was really able to dismantle everything that the Affinity deck was trying to assemble.
Yeah, and that's the thing about this Mardu Pyromancer deck is that when it's playing against one of these really aggressive creature decks that only has so many cards that are really that important, that's where it shines the brightest.
All right, well, here we see Welding Jar, Ornithopter, and Mox Opal as the turn 1 play, and a Inquisition of Kozilek gets countered there.
And Parker able to defend one of the cards that matter in hand.
But doesn't really have any follow-up here on turn 2, so not sure what the card is. What do you think he's like protecting there?
So he does have Etch Champion in the main.
Oh, okay.
That's a card I missed out on.
We do have. Oh, okay.
And
there you go.
Etch
Champion has hit the board.
This card is a problem for Galan, and Galan really gets put into a position where he needs to turn this game into a race because he has no way to get that off the table.
Yeah, he's going to go. He's going to go Faithless Looting. And that Etch Champion, by the way, it's interesting to watch the Affinity deck assemble this. It's got, the Etch Champion is has really difficult to deal with. It has protection from all colors as long as you control 3 or more artifacts. Also, the Welding Jar is also going to be able to protect something at some point along the way. And then, you start to assemble this, network of cards that just make it really difficult for Galan to operate.
Absolutely, and now we're seeing Parker with a pretty resilient draw here. Oftentimes when you have all of these resilient cards, it makes it harder to have the requisite number of threat cards that you need to really end the game quickly, so you give your opponent a lot of time, and sometimes you can lose before you're able to win with those cards. So that's kind of the detraction from playing those cards in your main deck as opposed to really changing your plan post-board.
So Nexus joins the party here and attacks. And that is going to get Fatal Push, but you know what? Parker wants to save that, and he's going to cash in his Welding Jar.
That's a really obnoxious card, Welding Jar.
This would be, by the way, with Lingering Souls and multiple Faithless Lootings, this would be a great time for Parker's deck to kick up some graveyard hate.
Yeah, if Parker had access to a card like Grafdigger's Cage in this spot, that would be...
Or Relic.
Pretty nice, yeah. Looks like he is leaving 2 mana open. We know that he brought in the Spell Pierce.
So plenty of land here for Parker. And again, the same attack as last turn. Anyway, looks like a Lightning Bolt is going to be the play. Yep. All right, this time he's like, fine. You've Stone Rained me for 1 mana.
Yeah.
But another Etch Champion comes down, and that's going to get increasingly difficult for Galan to be able to deal with at all.
I think Galan at this point needs to start aggressively using his artifact removal spells on things like the Mox Opal. He's going to go for the Ornithopter.
Yeah, Wear and Tear on the Ornithopter.
Trying to hope to put himself in a position where he can find a turn where he could turn off Metalcraft and maybe deal with these Etch Champions, because at this point, racing doesn't seem like an option anymore. The argument for using Wear Tear on the Opal instead of the Ornithopter is that your spot removal spells can still kill the Ornithopter where they cannot kill the Opal to turn off Metalcraft.
Any cards in hand for Parker? I can't.
If he does, they're not on the table.
Yeah. Galan is down to 9 here.
These Etch Champions.
They close quickly.
Yeah, the Grey Ogre is not the card you imagine being a quick closer in a format like Modern, but with lands dealing damage and people really floundering to prevent your really explosive things from happening, that 2 a turn, especially when it's 2 times 2,
All right.
really adds up.
Here is a Bedlam Reveler into another Bedlam Reveler.
So it looks like Galan found a really, really, really nice answer here in the form of engineered explosives.
Oh, wow.
Now, if he's able to find a 5th land here, which he did, then on the following turn, he's going to be able to explosives for 3 and crack it.
Right, because you see the Sacred Foundry there. So he's got red, white, and black mana available. Can Sunburst for 3. Interestingly, Engineered Explosive comes from the same set as the same block as the original Affinity deck.
Yes. Engineered Explosives. It's a card we talked about in our lead-in to this weekend. This is a card I expect to see a lot more of this weekend than we have seen in previous Modern GPs. Just a great card for the current setup of Modern.
All right, so Galen's going to go to 4 here. Oh! But somewhere John Finkel woke up shivering as the Electrostatic Bolt does 4 damage with Galan cracking his fetch land. And Parker Jensen evens things up at 1 game apiece here in round 2 of Grand Prix Phoenix.
Right, so Electrostatic Bolt should deal 2 damage, but if it's an artifact creature, it deals 4 damage.
And
Galvanic
Blast.
Blast.
Sorry, yes.
Yes, John Finkel and Brian Kibler were the famous semi-finalists in 2012.
It took 3 for Kibler, though. Kibler had to have 3 of them in hand.
Galvanic Blast to you. Galvanic Blast to you. Galvanic Blast to you. Yeah.
Waking up in cold sweats. Block with the wolf. Block with the wolf.
I think he's a bit busy for that, to be fair.
Probably.
So we're going up for game number 3 here in round number 2. The format is modern as it will be all weekend long. 15 rounds of Swiss. 8 of them today, 7 of them tomorrow, 6 and 2 to come back. We'll get the job done. You'll see Marshall Sutcliffe and Eduardo Sajgalik here in the booth for the start of the Pro Show. And BDM, the top 25 players in the world are very widely spread. We've got plenty of Asia-Pacific players, plenty of Europeans, plenty of Latin Americans. So, in a sense, the days of the 19 of the top 25 at a North American GP, they're kind of gone, but we do still have 6 of the top 25 here.
Absolutely. Seth Manfield, a Pro Tour champion. Jerry Thompson, a Pro Tour champion. Number 1, number 8. Owen Turtenwald, the Hall of Famer. 9th, Sam Pardee, multiple Pro Tour top 8s. Matt Severa, the Vehicles Master, Grand Prix champion. And Corey Baumeister, who has just been on an absolute tear the last 2 seasons at the Grand Prix circuit. Someone you know pretty well.
Yeah, a pretty close friend of mine. Right before he won that first GP to start the tear, he was actually staying at my house for the GP.
and that explains a lot, really. I think that's...
And I mean, Corey being in the top 25, I mean, that's a big accomplishment, right? That really just gives you, a sense of, how much he's done over these last 2 seasons. And still, maybe not having had that big Pro Tour breakout finish, but at the Grand Prix has just been really one of the most feared players in the room.
A reminder that when this match is finished, we'll go into Time Walk mode and we will show you Bobby Carpenter against Kenzie Ryan. That is Jund, brackets, yes, that means Bloodbraid Elf, against Kenzie Ryan on Dredge, which, just checking here, does not mean Bloodbraid Elf and does not mean Jace the Mind Sculptor either. All right, here we go. Game number 3, BDM, JVL, take it away.
All right, Galan kicks things off here. He's got a Marsh Flats, but no crack there, so no Thoughtseize, no Inquisition. Not the standard opening here. And Parker, we've seen some pretty explosive openings from. And let's see what he has in store this time.
So it's a Springleaf Drum,
an Ornithopter, and a Mox Opal.
Yeah, so he can make another 2 mana here. He could land one of his big cards in the form of Overseer, Ravager, or Cranial Plating.
What's the split card I see in Parker Jensen's hand? Is he running his own copies of Wear Tear?
Yeah, I suppose it would be Wear Tear. So perhaps he's worried about Blood Moon. he can still make colored mana with something like Springleaf Drum, get it off the table by using that half of the card. The one problem with Blood Moon when you're playing Affinity, especially against the deck that has so much removal, is that you're really relying on your lands a lot to poke through final points of damage, and Blood Moon having the ability to turn those off can be pretty strong. He could also just be worried that the Mardu deck has access to something else powerful of that type.
Galan, by the way, so often in Modern we'll see people go immediately to 17, crack their fetch land for a shock land. We see Galan sort of slow play that a little bit, crack the fetch land for a shock land at the end of Parker's turn, sort of preserving his life total because you're just worried. You have to play differently when you're playing against an aggressive deck like Affinity.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely true. I think another part of that, I believe this is a Thoughtseize here from Parker Jensen out of the sideboard.
I believe you.
Yes.
Based on the actions of Galan here. See Fatal Push. See Colligan's Command. You see a Collective Brutality. You see a Mountain. And you see a Dreadbore.
Yeah, so Galan on that last turn, he was able to leave open mana so that he had access to Fatal Push in case Parker had played one of his more powerful threats. But when the only creature Parker played was an Ornithopter, Galan doesn't necessarily want to use a premium removal spell on a card like Ornithopter. So instead of using that Fatal Push, he decided, I'm just going to crack this fetch land, put something into play that's not going to lose me any life, and wait till my opponent plays something that I care about before I actually need to do anything myself.
Very, very reactive hand here from Galan.
And that's just fine in a matchup like this.
Yeah, and he takes the Colligan's Command, possibly the scariest card against the Affinity player.
Yeah, it might as well be an Ancient Grudge with a flashback all in one card.
All right, so what's the follow-up here from Parker now that he's assessed Galan's hand? And says go.
And Galan probably was quite afraid there that he might see an Etch Champion. Could have been an issue for him.
Now, is this a problem for the Affinity deck? We see that it's he's sideboarded. He's brought in these cards that are not Affinity cards, right? Something like Wear Tear comes in. That is not a card that plays into the synergies of the deck at all.
Yeah.
So is that like, do you dilute the deck after sideboarding? How do you sort of preserve the explosiveness of the deck and then still have the ability to play cards like Thoughtseize, Wear Tear, or whatever?
So that's one of the biggest skill testers when you're playing one of these focused type of decks like Affinity. When you're playing these decks, it's really hard to sideboard in reactive cards without making your deck a lot less powerful and taking away the turns that you actually win the game, the number of turns that you're going to win the game in.
All right, here we see Galan is using Collective Brutality. He's discarding a Dreadbore. He's going to kill that Ornithopter, or attempt to kill the Ornithopter, and then also look at Parker Jensen's hand. Yes. Can't imagine he's just gaining 2 life. Oh, did he? Is that what he did? Yeah. He just went for the drain. He decided not to look at his hand. Went for the drain life half of the Collective Brutality. Maybe
That's interesting.
Parker doesn't have anything since he's not playing anything.
I think in some ways he's doing that to just fill his graveyard with more cards. It probably means that he has Bedlam Reveler in hand.
Okay. So there we see a Cranial Plating. No creature to plate though. This card is terrifying. Although he does have creature lands on the battlefield.
And now Galan with an interesting decision here because he was setting himself up for a nice Reveler this turn. However, he drew a Fatal Push, and now he's facing off against a Cranial Plating. And if he goes ahead and casts the Bedlam Reveler,
he's got to discard Fatal Push.
Yes.
All right, Galvanic Blast you. Take 4.
Yeah, it's not quite as impactful at the moment.
No.
Yeah, a not necessarily too impressive Galvanic Blast there. Very aggressive line.
But again, if he can find one window with which to get a creature land in here with the Cranial Plating, which is what he's attempting to do right now, that represents another big chunk of Galan's life total.
Oh.
So there's the Fatal Push. And a pass of the turn from Parker Jensen. And I think he has another one. I'm sorry, I'm not quite able to make it through the glare, but I do think that that's another creature, another Nexus up there. Here's Engineered Explosives. 4-2.
Yeah, now we're going to see Parker be able to use that wear and tear.
Wow, that's great. Wear tear shining out of the sideboard here.
Yeah, protecting that cranial plating quite nicely.
There's a Signal Pest. Animate my land. Another Fatal Push, though. The 1-mana Stone Rains we've been seeing out of Galan all match long. And now perhaps time for some revelry.
I believe it is time for Revelry. So Galan going to have to discard.
Empty-handed, too. Wow.
No cards, drawing 3 cards, getting a 3/4 prowess.
And getting to do it for 2 mana, too. So he got the
Just
full
2
value
mana.
out of that card.
That's pretty savage.
Yes.
Wow.
Now also Galan's going to be able to deploy a Young Pyromancer this turn. He will take a hit from the plating on the following turn, but then he's going to be able to close the game very quickly. He has a pair of Faithless Lootings in the yard to both trigger prowess and trigger the Pyromancer. Find him the answers he needs to survive.
You see him adding up how much damage he might be taking from the Signal Pest.
Yeah, so
Okay, there's another Springleaf Drum. That's another artifact. Signal Pest, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 artifacts in play. No creatures with flying or reach to block it. And that's going to take a big chunk out of Galan's life total there. Can he find an answer? No. Faithless Looting is a big part of getting that underway.
it's still no answer there. Found himself just another Young Pyromancer. So Galan, over the course of the last 2 turns, has seen 7 new cards and has not been able to find a removal spell for either this Cranial Plating or the Signal Pest. Parker Jensen playing Affinity, a deck that you can never count out. But coming into this match, we were talking about how good this matchup is for Galan, and here's Galan in a pretty scary situation.
Plays a second copy of Young Pyromancer, and it's his turn to attack. Yep, nope, that elemental token is not ready to attack yet. It just came into play this turn. And it looks like the players are confirming their life totals here.
Yeah, 10 sounds about right.
Probably.
Yeah, certainly 10-8 is what they've got on Parker's side, and that's what we've got up on screen. But
All right. So Parker can still just get in for 6. What does he have here? That's a whip flag.
Wow, and that changes the math. Now, Galan Parker able to put Galan down to 1 or 2 life here.
Yep.
Down
for
to
2 life,
2.
it was 6. Yeah, he had 6 power. He's got is this another Faithless Looting? Yes. Can he find something?
It looks like he did.
Was that a Fatal Push?
I believe it was, yes.
I think that's been the best card of the morning so far.
Fatal Push?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just one of the, certainly one of the top 10 cards in Modern.
I think so. Yeah.
So he's going to flash back Faithless Looting as well. Holding on to that push, gets a second trigger.
There's a wear tear.
Also, it looks like a Collective Brutality. He's only going to be able to keep 1 card, so which one is he going to keep? It's got to be the Fatal Push with only 1 mana, right?
I imagine so.
Oh, he didn't have a Fatal Push. That was a Collective Brutality.
Okay, yeah.
Did not find the Fatal Push. He extends the hand, and Parker Jensen and Affinity take the match 2 games to 1 here.
And I've got to say, it's been a while since we've been in a booth where we've said, and that's the match to Affinity. It's just not been something that we've seen. We would normally expect a whole bunch of big name players to be playing it. We would expect it to be at or near the top table. So there we are. All right. So that is the end of our coverage of live action in round number 2. conveniently enough, we pressed the big shiny red record button for some more. And you'll see that in just a couple of minutes. Don't go anywhere. cannot tell you how quickly we would lose our jobs if you got to hear what was said during the ad breaks. Oh boy. Anyway, welcome back. Rich, BDM, JVL here with you for round number 2 of MTG Launch. It is time to get down to our Time Warp match, and we've got a great one lined up. We've got some Jund on one side of the table, so yes, that means Bloodbraid Elf. And on the other side, we've got Kenzie Ryan playing Dredge. So let's get down to it. Here's BDM and JVL.
All right, welcome to more round 2 action here at Grand Prix Phoenix. Brian Dave Marshall in the booth with Pro Tour champion Jake Van Lunen, and Jund leads things off with Inquisition of Kozilek, and we're going to see what a Dredge... oh boy, well this is a dredge hand that is a little short on cards. It looks like Kenzie mulliganed to 4 here.
Yeah, not the worst mulligan to 4. A dredge outlet and a discard outlet. So we have a dredge card and a discard outlet. So Insolent Neonite alongside Stinkweed Imp there. Bobby didn't take the Neonite, so giving Kenzie an opportunity to get into this game here. It's very surprising to me.
All right, so Fetch Land is going to go get a red source.
Yeah, so probably finding a stomping ground here, I imagine.
That looks like a stomping ground. Vaguely.
Yeah, then Neonate will come down for Kenzie, and this is going to make Kenzie have a pretty explosive turn 1 here.
Ajax the Greater 5 asks in chat, Magic, what happened to the advantage bar? Well, we have an employee who does the advantage bar, but they live inside the Pro Tour kit, and so they just they're just taken out at each of the Pro Tours, and then we put them back in the kit, and they get transported around the world to the next Pro Tour. So we'll see the advantage bar again in Richmond in June, I believe that is.
So Bobby Carpenter, by the way, he just wants to play green and black. He's a man after Reed Duke's heart. He wants he and his buddies wanted to travel to a GP, and he says, "Okay, well, pick a modern one, one that I can play green and black cards, even if they're not good. I want to play green and black at a modern GP. That's where I want to be."
I can respect that.
I mean, it served Reed Duke well for almost as long as modern has existed, right? Thoughtseizes and Lilianas and Tarmogoyfs, and it's a pretty Scavenging Ooze. Ooh, Scavenging Ooze is a pretty sweet card here for Bobby Carpenter up against the dredge deck. There we see Kenzie has sacrificed her Neonate, discarded the Stinkweed Imp, and is dredging it back to hand. And that's going to net her a Narcomoeba.
Yeah, so likely Kenzie did that during the post-combat main phase for Bobby Carpenter. She would do that in case she hit a prized amalgam alongside something like Narcomoeba there, and that would mean that she'd be able to attack with that prized amalgam right away. It didn't work out that way. Now, Kenzie's in a situation where she really needs to prevent Bobby from untapping with that Scavenging Ooze, so she may need to tap her Stomping Ground here for red mana, then target it with her Ghost Quarter, finding another mountain, and that way she can flash back her Conflagrate from her graveyard, thus discarding her Stinkweed Imp, and this will let her get that Scavenging Ooze off the table. So she's not gonna do that, but there's some exciting things that happen there. She's trying to get rid of the green source here from Bobby, preventing any sort of ooze action from happening here.
In chat, someone called Wedge likes dredge.
Dredge has a number of very vocal fans.
It's true.
In the greater Magic community.
I mean, it's one of the modern decks that I have built in paper.
Oh, yeah?
I like this deck a lot.
So there we see another Neonate. And now this is going to... Now these two players are going to just kind of stare off over this one green source, right?
Yeah, it's really interesting what's going on here.
Okay, so the Scavenging Ooze is going to take out a a Neonate out of Kenzie's graveyard. And are we going to see another Stinkweed Imp activation while he's tapped out? No.
So because Insolent Neonate is all one ability,
yeah.
Bobby wouldn't have an opportunity to use the...
oh, he does. He can't respond to...
Oh, wait, no. I believe the discard a card is the activation cost.
Yeah.
So, yes, he could respond and get the Stinkweed Imp. So it's probably correct for Kenzie to have tried to get the dredge going.
All right, well, here's Inquisition of Kozilek. It sees the Stinkweed Imp. All right, Stinkweed Imp goes to the yard. And you see Bobby very definitively pointing at the Stinkweed Imp with his Scavenging Ooze. Gains a life, gets his ooze up to 4 power, and begins to go on offense here. This is your nightmare when you come to a tournament with a dredge deck and you're like your opponent just plays a Scavenging Ooze. You're like, what do I have to do?
Who does that?
Yeah.
Always.
I think that for what it's worth, Dredge is powerful enough that it's very easy to win through a Scavenging Ooze in most situations.
Yeah.
We have
Usually
to remember Kenzie mulligan to 4.
You usually have more than 4 cards to work with. So talk to us a little bit about this Jund list that Bobby Carpenter's playing. What does Jund look like right now in the wake of Bloodbraid Elf being unbanned?
So Bobby is really playing a lot of powerful 3s to take the most advantage possible of his Bloodbraid Elf. He has 3 copies of Liliana the Veil, 2 copies of Liliana the Last Hope. He has Kolaghan's Command. He has Maelstrom Pulse. His deck gets some really, really nice hits off those Bloodbraid Elves. In addition to that,
we've seen 1 Jace so far. Will we see a Bloodbraid here? No, nope, not this turn. Lightning Bolt's going to take down Narcomoeba. Narcomoeba's going to get removed, and Scavenging Ooze is going to get up to a 5.
This just in, it's Breaking Ooze here at Grand Prix Phoenix. Smash.
Yeah, in for 5. Kenzie is up against it here. Thinking about fetch lands and neonate activations and what's the card? And Conflagrate gets removed with the Scavenging Ooze, and that is going to be it for Game 1 for Bobby Carpenter and the Jund deck.
I ooze, you lose. There it is. Bobby Carpenter takes the business, but we get into game number 2 because this is Time Walk. It's Magic without the shuffling. So let's get to it. Can Dredge come back?
Rich, it's Modern. There's going to still be so much
shuffling.
So much shuffling.
Yeah.
So turn 1 Faithless Looting here for Kenzie Ryan. See a Stinkweed Imp go to the yard. And working with a full hand this time, she is going to be able to get the Dredge engine online here, starting with turn 2.
In post-board, it does not look like there's a lot of Dredge hate in the sideboard here for Bobby.
Oh, how about a Nihil Spellbomb?
Yeah, he does. He has a single copy of Nihil Spellbomb, and he has an Anger of the God. Oh, he also has a... Okay, never mind. Yeah, he has 3 cards. So he's bringing in 3 really powerful cards. Nihil Spellbomb, a card that Kenzie is definitely capable of fighting through.
Kind of not an amazing Dredge there. You see Life from the Loam in hand.
Yeah, I think the Prized Amalgam and the Faithless Looting are the only relevant cards in Graveyard here for Kenzie. Dredge is a deck that's very difficult to sideboard with, especially because all of the cards...
Same thing we were talking about Affinity, right?
Yeah, all the cards are such important puzzle pieces. So when you start taking out these cards that really make your engine work, you find yourself in a bit of a quagmire at times.
Hopefully not a Bajuka Bog. All right, here's Faithless Looting.
A cathartic reunion on the front of those 4. Lightning Storm.
Yeah, so Thug gets Dredge there. Golgari Thug, but no extra Dredger there, and not really much relevance put into the graveyard. So Kenzie's still unable to force Bobby to crack this Nihil Spellbomb right now. Probably doesn't want to put multiple Dredge enablers into the graveyard here.
All right. But puts the Thug back, it looked like.
Okay, yeah, protecting the Imp, putting the Thug back. Still with some faithless lootings.
And you see the standard fan of the graveyard of the dredge player, possibly the most important zone up until the last turns of the game.
Yeah, and remember, the graveyard is kind of like the hand for a deck like Dredge.
So Kenzie's found herself up against powerful adversary cards in Game 1 and Game 2 here. Scavenging Ooze in Game 1, and now the Spell Bomb here in Game 2. How does she play around the Spell Bomb? This is something you were talking about. What do you do as a Dredge player facing off against the Spell Bomb?
So there are a number of things that you can do. One thing you can do is you can discard multiple cards like Bloodghast at the same time, and then play a fetch land, and when your opponent goes to crack their Spell Bomb, you crack your fetch land in response. You get to still return those Bloodghast to play. Another thing you can do is you can, operate not quite at full power level, and that's what Kenzie's choosing to do here, where, she's dredging a Thug repeatedly. She's trying to get her graveyard to the point where Bobby is forced to use that Spell Bomb, but she still has enough action that she's able to get back into the game.
That sounds like a very fine thread that you're trying to get through the needle there, Jake.
Yeah, no, and you're in this situation very often as Dredge.
Okay.
And you do win a decent percentage of these games where you're trying to fight through a card like Nile Spellbomb or Relic of Progenitus.
Right, so this isn't an unusual situation. I've never played a turn of Dredge in my life, so, very straightforwardly, I don't know how hard this is that we're looking at.
Yeah, and the first time you pick up Dredge and try to play with it, and you're playing a Game 2 or a Game 3 and your opponent has one of these cards, it feels very, very difficult. The more you play with it, the more comfortable you get, and you start to find ways to, edge your way into victory.
Is Dredge one of the decks that you would most want to have experience playing sideboarded games compared to in the field in general?
Absolutely. Game ones, you often just win.
Right. Okay.
So here we see Tarmogoyf comes down for Bobby Carpenter on turn 2, and he's going to let Kenzie continue to do her thing here. And she dredges. She's going to find a Narcomoeba. And Spellbomb is going to get sacrificed before the Narcomoeba can come into play.
So Kenzie now able to crack that. That's step one. It's quite important.
And Tarmogoyf has, gone down a little bit.
Yeah, that's one thing about Tarmogoyf in the Dredge matchup. It's really, really big and scary. It is a monster you want to be worried about.
So just casting Light from the Loam to get the next wave of dredging started. So, when you cast Light from the Loam, you're able to return up to 3 target lands from your graveyard to your hand. But you can also just cast it for nothing, and then she gets to dredge next turn, put 3 cards into her library. Oh, my gosh. There's a Scavenging Ooze.
Yeah, and this Scavenging Ooze playing cleanup is a really nice 1-2 punch here for Bobby
Wow.
Carpenter. And we talked about how the Dredge deck is able to fight through a piece of hate, but when your opponent has multiple pieces of hate and is able to, play them in conjunction with one another, it gets much more difficult to fight through. And now Kenzie just really in a very, very difficult situation.
So she has announced her draw step, dredging the Light from the Loam. Bobby is attempting to sacrifice the Bloodstained Mire, go get a green source, and activate Scavenging Ooze in response. And the 2 players are discussing, checking with the judge about how this is going to work. And when this activation, when the Bloodstained Mire is being sacrificed, I would assume.
Oh, little earthquake. Sorry about that.
Okay. So the Light from the Loam is going to come into Kenzie's hand. But she is in a terrible spot here.
Yeah, and what happened there is Bobby had attempted to get rid of the dredger before Kenzie was dredging it, but he waited until Kenzie's draw step to do so, and you can't do that because once the dredge has been announced, you can't remove the card that's being dredged and have
It's the
it
same.
go away.
It's the same as drawing a card.
Yes. So Bobby would have needed to do that during Kenzie's upkeep.
And then, in which case, you would just draw a card as normal.
Yes.
You can't. You don't get to like foil their draw step. All right. So, Bloodgast, still a pretty good card to remove there.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to see a Faithless Looting get flashed back.
And with that ooze on the other side of the table, Kenzie likely does not even want to discard valuable pieces into the graveyard. Instead, I think that when you're at this stage of the game in Dredge, the way you fight your way back in is by nickel and diming your way to victory by trading with cards like Stinkweed Imp. For example, on the previous turn, I believe Kenzie has a Thug in play. Perhaps Kenzie could have blocked with the Thug after playing a Thug instead of simply playing a Life from the Loam. A lot of different options in these post-boarded games. Games can get quite complicated here.
All right, so discards Gemstone Mine and Life from the Loam. Passes the turn back to Bobby. See, the players, I think, are just constantly confirming life totals, and there's a lot of fetch lands, shock lands.
Which is such a good idea. Like, why would you ever want this to be wrong? Just constantly checking is a great plan. It is a constant source of amazement to me that people genuinely sometimes see knowing the life totals as a sign of weakness somehow. Like, what?
The most bewildering thing someone could say to me at a Magic match is, "What am I at?"
Yes. Yes. Isn't the answer to that always like 0?
Oh, yeah, you're dead. There's Inquisition of Kozilek. And, again, we're going to be able to pick any number of cards here.
The Inquisitions, those stay in post board against this Dredge deck because you want to hit cards like Insolent Neonate, Faithless Looting, and or Cathartic Reunion, especially when you're on the play. This sometimes leaves some of the anemic cards. Now he can just remove whatever he takes.
I was going to say, once you have a Scavenging Ooze, though, you could take a Stinkweed Imp and then exile it and, continue to build your ooze.
Absolutely.
Build your ooze.
There was no pun there. I was just building it up.
Yeah.
A lot of people have tried Breaking Ooze, but it's just a very good card.
That's true. I would say solid, but it's kind of not. It's sort of amorphous and yeah.
All right, so
that is the Stinkweed Imp there?
I believe it is Stinkweed Imp, yeah. So Bobby now can attack. Likely remove some things from the graveyard.
Yeah. Here we go. In comes Tarmogoyf and Scavenging Ooze.
Looks to me like we're down to just one match left
Plays
in
a Dark
this round.
Confidant.
That's just laying it on here.
Can't let her untap with that Stinkweed Imp, I would assume.
Yeah, I would assume that he would not want to do that, so.
See the players arguing back and forth, or not necessarily arguing, but discussing back and forth.
Yeah, trying to figure out something, which or what.
And, okay. Well, the Stinkweed Imp is going to be allowed to be dredged. Okay.
So, Bobby, instead of taking the Stinkweed Imp out here, instead choosing to allow Kenzie to dredge it, perhaps.
Oh, because I guess if he removes it, then she's
Yeah.
just going to get the loam. Yeah, that makes sense. I forgot that there was also a loam. Mills 3 lands.
It's pretty good when you have the loam. Unfortunately, Kenzie's life total under a lot of pressure here now. I think Bobby really worried that maybe there's something that she could flip into her graveyard that he needs to remove with that ooze. Just leaving open that 1 green mana is a really nice insurance policy for him.
All right, here's Cathartic Reunion, and this can be a very scary card.
Yeah.
Just going to discard Life in the Loam.
And the Thug here,
And
so.
the Golgari Thug. His first step, she's going to dredge back. Wow, look at this. That's quite the hit here.
Yeah, so that's
A
4.
second,
Then.
wow, and a third Stinkweed Imp.
She really needs to hit double Narcomoeba here off the 3rd hit. If she only hits 1 copy of Narcomoeba, then... oh, okay. Yeah, he cannot activate this right now because she is still dredging. There's the Cathartic Reunion is still resolving. It's still happening.
Wow. So
What, that cathartic reunion from 10 minutes ago is still
Yes.
resolving?
So another 5 cards are going to come off the top here for Kenzie. Bobby is going to have an opportunity to exile one of them with that Scavenging Ooze. If Kenzie is able to hit a pair of Narcomoebas, like I said previous to this, then Bobby would only be able to exile a single one of them. And that would mean that all of those Surprise and Amalgams, I believe there are 3 of them
Yes.
in Kenzie's graveyard, would all trigger and they would all come out of the graveyard while Bobby's green mana is tapped down from that Scavenging Ooze. And depending on what's left in Bobby's hand, that could give Kenzie the window she needs to fight her way back into this game.
wow. And Kenzie is
And so deciding on this last dredge
agonizing
here,
on
maybe?
this third dredge. Here we go.
Yeah.
It's another Stinkweed Imp. 5 more cards going into the graveyard. No Narcomoebas.
No Narcomoebas. Last card in her hand could be a land to go with the Bloodghast. It's not, though. It's
All right.
yeah, and now Bobby Carpenter can simply attack for the win here on the following turn, and that's going to be it.
Any 13 mana cards in his deck?
I do not believe so.
He's got a Dark Confidant in play there. It would have to be a 14 mana card now. So
No Dracos. Looking over Bobby's deck list here.
Draco Implosion would be
Yes.
that deck. All right. Untaps. Here's the Dark Confidant. Takes 2 from an Abrupt Decay. Draws for his turn. And he is just going to be able to rumble in. There's a Grafdigger's Cage for a little extra protection.
Even more hate. Grafdigger's Cage, one of the very best cards against the Dredge deck. Quite a bit stronger than even something like a Nihil Spellbomb or a Relic of Progenitus.
And in comes the team. Kenzie extends the hand, and Bobby Carpenter and Jund have won the match. And Bobby goes to 2-0 here. Playing the deck, he traveled across country to play. Green, black, and X. X in this case being red for Bloodbraid Elf.
All right, so there we go. That's the end of Time Walk for round number 2, and that means it is just about the end of MTG launch, because when we come back, the 3 of us will magically have transformed or manamorphosed or whatever you flipped into Marshall Sutcliffe and Eduardo Sajgalik. But we've got a couple of moments to review the morning here on MTG launch. So, BDM, what have we seen? And Jake, if you want to chime in with what we sort of learnt as we went along.
So through 2 rounds and 4 feature matches, we've seen 8 different decks. This round, we saw Mardu Pyromancer versus Affinity. We saw Affinity, really fight through a deck that seemed very well positioned against it. And then we just watched Jund versus Dredge, and that was kind of a nightmare matchup for the Dredge deck with main deck hate cards in the form of Scavenging Ooze, and then post-board all sorts of hate cards to play through.
So, Jake, you got rid of Burn and said you would have played Nightfall in that matchup, and then you said because you played lots of Blood Moon, you would play through the Breach, not the blue-white control. So let's do the same experience with round 2. Here's Mardu Pyromancer, we can give you that, or we can give you Affinity. Which of those two would you choose and why?
I would pick Mardu Pyromancer. It's definitely more my style of deck. I like playing with cards like Thoughtseize. I like playing with cards like Inquisition of Kozilek. I like being able to refill my hand. I've won a lot of matches with Lingering Souls. It's my kind of deck. Affinity is very all-in.
Can we do this newlywed game style where I have to guess what Jake's answer is
Oh,
going to
okay.
be?
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I
yeah.
know.
I like that.
So Brian, we asked Jake, would he rather play Jund or Dredge? After 27 years in New Jersey together, what would he have said?
I believe he would have said Dredge.
Okay, and why do you think he would go for Dredge?
This is a deck he has built.
Okay.
And this is a deck that breaks some of the rules of Magic, right? It does things that where you're playing on a completely different axis than your opponent, and that is something that Jake, who won a Pro Tour in, under 15 total minutes in the finals, is always looking to do. That's my answer.
Okay, so Jake, we asked Brian whether you would play Jund or Dredge. Bear in mind that if he was right about what you said, the two of you get a round off in round 3. So, would you have played Jund or Dredge, and why?
Dredge.
Okay, there you go. You get round 3 off. So why?
I've played a lot of Dredge. I've top 4'd a few tournaments in the past 2 months with Dredge. Again, I really like the way Brian put it. Dredge breaks the rules of Magic. I'm a combo player at heart. I want to do strange things. Playing post-boarded games with Dredge through a lot of hate cards is my happiest place in the entire world, finding a way to win those games.
See, this seems kind of strange because on the one hand, you want to do the I want to break the rules of Magic decks, but on the other, you want to play all these cards